remember standing in Marcus and Victoria's marble foyer, my hands trembling as I clutched the hospital bill. 24 hours earlier, the doctors had given us the diagnosis. Emma needed an emergency kidney transplant. She was only 7 years old and time was running out fast. My brother Marcus lived in this mansion. 6 bedrooms, a home theater, an indoor pool. He could afford anything. Victoria, his wife, was planning their vow renewal ceremony, dropping $250,000 on flowers and champagne. Thought family meant something. I thought they'd help without hesitation. But when I explained Emma's situation, Marcus folded his arms and looked away. Victoria sipped her wine, barely making eye contact. "We've got the ceremony in 2 months," she said coolly. "Everything's already paid for. We can't just redirect funds now." My heart shattered. I wanted to scream, to beg, to shake them until they understood. Instead, I left quietly, choking back tears. That night, I held Emma's fragile hand in the hospital room, promising her I'd find a way. Little did Marcus and Victoria know, I already had a plan forming, one that would change everything. Growing up, Marcus was always the golden child. Mom and Dad adored him, celebrated every achievement, funded his college education without question. I was the dreamer, the one who took risks and made questionable choices. After high school, I started a small graphic design business from my bedroom. It barely paid the bills, but I loved the creative freedom. Marcus, meanwhile, became a corporate lawyer, married Victoria, a real estate agent from a wealthy family, and built a life of luxury. I met Daniel, a kind-hearted mechanic, and we married young. We didn't have much, but we had love. When Emma was born, she became our entire world. Marcus visited once, bringing an expensive stuffed bear, then disappeared into his busy schedule. Over the years, the gap between our lives widened. He drove a Tesla. I drove a decade-old sedan. He vacationed in Europe. We camped in state parks. But I never envied him. I was proud of my small design business and my beautiful family. Then Emma got sick. The medical bills piled up fast. Our insurance covered some costs, but the transplant required upfront payments we couldn't afford. That's when I swallowed my pride and called Marcus. The conversation with Marcus started off okay. He listened as I explained Emma's condition, the urgency, the astronomical costs. I wasn't asking for a gift. I offered to sign a loan agreement, promising to pay back every penny. "Marcus, she's your niece," I said, my voice cracking. "She's 7 years old. Please." There was a long pause. Then Victoria's voice chimed in from the background. "Honey, we've already committed everything to the ceremony. It's in 8 weeks. We can't just cancel." Marcus cleared his throat. "Look, I wish I could help, but Victoria's right. We've signed contracts, made deposits. The vendors won't refund us. Maybe after the ceremony we can talk." I felt my chest tighten. After the ceremony. Emma didn't have that kind of time. The doctors said we had maybe 3 weeks before her condition became critical. I pressed harder, explaining the timeline, but Marcus grew defensive. "Don't guilt-trip me," he snapped. "I've worked hard for what I have. You made your choices too." The line went dead. I sat there, staring at my phone, unable to believe my own brother had just chosen a party over his niece's life. That night I couldn't sleep. Daniel held me as I sobbed into his chest, feeling helpless and betrayed. "We'll figure this out," he whispered, though I could hear the fear in his voice. The next morning, I visited the hospital's financial aid office. They offered a small discount, but it wasn't nearly enough. I started a crowdfunding campaign online, sharing Emma's story with friends and strangers. Donations trickled in. $50 here, $100 there. It was heartwarming but nowhere near the amount we needed. I picked up extra freelance projects, working until midnight every night. Daniel took on overtime shifts at the garage. We sold our second car, our wedding rings, anything of value. Still, we were short by tens of thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, I saw Victoria's social media posts. Photos of her dress fittings, the venue decorated with crystal chandeliers, sneak peeks of the floral arrangements. Each post felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Then, 3 days after my conversation with Marcus, something unexpected happened. I received an email from a pharmaceutical company I'd once designed a logo for 5 years ago. They wanted to hire me for a major rebranding project. The pay. Substantial. Enough to cover Emma's transplant and then some. 5. I stared at the email, heart pounding. The pharmaceutical company Medicorp was expanding into new markets and needed a complete visual identity overhaul. They'd remembered my work from years ago and tracked me down. The project was massive: logo design, packaging, marketing materials, everything. The proposed fee was $200,000, paid in installments as I completed each phase. Felt like a miracle. I immediately replied, confirming my interest and availability. We scheduled a video call for the next day. That night, I allowed myself a flicker of hope. Maybe we wouldn't need Marcus after all. Maybe I could save Emma on my own terms. The next morning, I met with Medicorp's executive team. They loved my portfolio and were impressed by my passion. "We need someone who understands both creativity and precision," the CEO said. "Your designs have that balance." We signed the contract that afternoon. The first payment, $50,000, would arrive within a week, just in time for Emma's pre-transplant procedures. I called Daniel from the parking lot, tears streaming down my face. "We're going to save her," I whispered. He laughed and cried at the same time. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. The money arrived exactly when promised. I paid the hospital, secured Emma's spot on the transplant list, and covered the initial surgical costs. The relief was overwhelming. Emma's doctors moved quickly, running final tests and preparing her for the procedure. She was scared but brave, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny. "Will it hurt, Mommy?" she asked, her big eyes searching mine. I smiled, brushing her hair back. "A little, sweetheart. But then you'll feel so much better. I promise." The transplant was scheduled for 3 weeks out, giving us time to find a donor match. Meanwhile, I threw myself into the Medicorp project, working late into the night. The designs flowed easily. I was fueled by purpose and determination. Each completed mock-up brought us closer to financial stability and Emma's recovery. I didn't tell Marcus about the contract or the money. Part of me wanted him to know I'd managed without him, but another part didn't want to give him the satisfaction of feeling relieved. He'd made his choice. Now I was making mine. 2 weeks before Emma's surgery, I received a phone call that changed everything. It was Marcus, and his voice sounded strained, almost desperate. "We need to talk," he said. "It's urgent." I almost didn't answer when I saw Marcus's name on my screen. But curiosity got the better of me. "What is it?" asked, keeping my tone cold. He hesitated, then spoke quickly. "Victoria's sick. Really sick. She collapsed last week, and the doctors ran tests. She needs a kidney transplant too." Froze. The irony was almost too much to process. "A kidney transplant," I repeated slowly. "Yes. And here's the thing, she's a rare blood type. The waiting list is long, really long. We need to find a living donor, someone who matches. We've tested family members, but no one's compatible. The doctor said we might need to look outside the family, maybe even pay for a donor through legal channels. But that's expensive, and with the ceremony costs already draining us." He trailed off, and I could hear the panic in his voice. For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Then I remembered his words. "I've worked hard for what I have. You made your choices too." I took a deep breath. "So you're calling me because you need money now?" There was a long pause. "No. Well, partially. But also, we were hoping you might know someone. Maybe through Emma's situation, you've connected with donor networks or something." I almost laughed. The audacity. I didn't respond right away. My mind raced, weighing options and emotions. Part of me wanted to hang up immediately, to give Marcus a taste of the rejection he'd served me. But another part, the part that still remembered us as kids, building forts in the backyard and sharing secrets, that part hesitated. How long does Victoria have? Asked finally. The doctors say a few months if we're lucky. But her condition is deteriorating fast. We're desperate. I thought about Emma, about the fear and helplessness I'd felt when her diagnosis came. Despite everything, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. I'll think about it, I said quietly. That's all I can promise right now. Marcus exhaled sharply. Thank you. I know I don't deserve your help after what I said. But please, if there's anything you can do. I ended the call without another word. That night I told Daniel about the conversation. He was furious. After everything they did. They literally chose a party over Emma's life. And now they want your help. I nodded, feeling torn. I know. But Victoria's dying too. And as much as I hate what they did, I'm not sure I can just ignore it. Daniel softened slightly. What are you thinking? I wasn't sure yet. But an idea was beginning to form. One that would test everyone involved. 9. Over the next few days, I researched donor networks, reaching out to contacts I'd made during Emma's treatment. I learned about paired donation programs, where incompatible donor-recipient pairs could swap with other pairs to make matches work. It was complicated but possible. I also discovered something interesting. Victoria's rare blood type was the same as mine. I'd been tested as a potential donor for Emma before we found a match through the transplant list. My results showed I was healthy, with 2 functioning kidneys. Technically, I could donate to Victoria. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I could save her life. But should I? I spent sleepless nights wrestling with the question. On one hand, she'd dismissed Emma's life as less important than a lavish party. On the other hand, I wasn't sure I could live with myself if I had the power to save someone and chose not to. Then I thought about Emma. What kind of example would I set for her? Would I teach her that compassion is conditional, that help should only be given to those who've earned it? Or would I show her that being the bigger person means acting with integrity, even when it's hard? Finally, I made my decision. I called Marcus and told him I was a match. I could donate my kidney to Victoria. But there was a condition. Marcus's voice cracked with relief when I told him. Oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much. We'll pay for everything. The surgery, your recovery, anything you need. Cut him off. There's a condition, Marcus. I'll donate my kidney to Victoria. But first, you need to cancel the vow renewal ceremony and redirect that money to children's hospitals and transplant funds for families who can't afford treatment. All of it. $250,000. Silence. Then, what? You can't be serious. I'm completely serious, I said firmly. You were willing to spend that money on a party while Emma was dying. Now you're going to use it to help kids like her. That's my condition. Non-negotiable. I could hear Victoria's voice in the background, muffled but frantic. Marcus spoke again, his tone defensive. That's not fair. We've already signed contracts, made commitments. People are expecting this ceremony. And Emma was expecting her uncle to care about her life. I shot back. You made your choice then. Now I'm making mine. Cancel the ceremony and donate the money, or find another donor. You have 48 hours to decide. I hung up before he could argue further. My hands were shaking, but I felt strangely calm. I'd drawn my line in the sand. Now it was up to them to decide what mattered more. Their pride or Victoria's life. 11. The next 2 days were agonizing. I heard nothing from Marcus or Victoria. I went through my routine, working on Medicorp designs, visiting Emma in the hospital, trying to stay positive. Daniel supported my decision completely, though he worried about the physical risks of donation. Are you sure about this? He asked one evening as we sat on the couch. Even if they agree, you're giving up a part of yourself for someone who treated us so badly. I leaned against him, exhausted. I'm not doing it for Victoria. I'm doing it because it's the right thing. And maybe, just maybe, it'll teach them something about what really matters. On the morning of the 3rd day, my phone rang. It was Marcus. We'll do it, he said quietly. We're canceling the ceremony. The vendors are furious, and we're losing deposits, but we'll make it work. We'll donate the money like you asked." I felt a wave of emotion, relief, vindication, sadness, all mixed together. "Send me proof," I said. "Once I see the donations confirmed, we'll move forward with the transplant evaluation." "Okay," he agreed. Then softer, "I'm sorry. For everything. You were right. We were selfish and cruel, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." I didn't respond. Some wounds couldn't be healed with words alone. True to his word, Marcus sent me documentation within days. He and Victoria had liquidated assets, broken contracts, and redirected funds. $250,000 was split among 3 organizations: a children's hospital transplant fund, a non-profit supporting low-income families with medical bills, and a scholarship fund for kids affected by chronic illness. I verified each donation, checking with the organizations directly. It was real. They'd actually done it. I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sorrow. Satisfaction because justice had been served in its own way. Sorrow because it had taken Victoria's life being on the line for Marcus to understand what I'd been trying to tell him all along. The transplant evaluation process began immediately. I underwent extensive testing, blood work, imaging, psychological assessments. Everything checked out. I was a perfect match for Victoria, and my health was excellent. The surgery was scheduled for 3 weeks out, 1 week after Emma's transplant. It would be tight, but the doctors assured me both procedures could proceed safely. Emma's surgery came first. I held her hand as they wheeled her into the operating room, whispering promises and prayers. Daniel stayed by my side, both of us terrified and hopeful. The procedure took 6 hours. When the surgeon finally emerged, smiling, we collapsed in relief. "It went perfectly," she said. "Emma's doing great." 15. Emma's recovery was remarkable. Within days she was sitting up, smiling, asking for her favorite foods. The color returned to her cheeks, and her energy slowly came back. It was like watching a flower bloom after a long winter. I spent every possible moment with her, knowing my own surgery was approaching fast. Daniel worried constantly. "You're sure about this?" he asked for the 100th time. "It's major surgery, and you'll be recovering while taking care of Emma." I kissed his forehead. "I'm sure. And besides, the doctors say I'll be fine. People live perfectly normal lives with 1 kidney." The night before my surgery, Marcus and Victoria came to visit. It was awkward at first. None of us knew quite what to say. Victoria looked fragile, her skin pale and eyes tired. She'd lost weight, and her hands trembled slightly. "Thank you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I don't deserve this. I don't deserve your kindness after what we did. But thank you." I studied her for a long moment. "You're right. You don't deserve it. But Emma's lying in that hospital bed because people who didn't even know her donated money to help. Strangers showed more compassion than her own family. I'm doing this because I believe people can change. Prove me right." Marcus stepped forward, his eyes red. "We will. Promise. We'll spend the rest of our lives making this right." 14. The surgery went smoothly. I woke up groggy and sore, but the doctors assured me everything had gone according to plan. Victoria's body accepted the kidney immediately, and her condition began improving within hours. Recovery was harder than I'd anticipated. The pain was intense, and simple movements exhausted me. But every time I felt myself weakening, I'd think of Emma, her smile, her laughter, her second chance at life. That kept me going. Daniel was incredible, managing both my care and Emma's while keeping up with work. My parents flew in to help, shocked by everything that had happened. Mom cried when she learned about Marcus's initial refusal and the conditions I'd set. "I'm so proud of you," she said, holding my hand. "You're stronger than I ever realized." Marcus and Victoria visited regularly during my recovery. The dynamic between us had shifted completely. The arrogance and entitlement were gone, replaced by genuine humility and gratitude. They brought meals, helped with errands, and spent time with Emma, getting to know their niece properly for the first time. One afternoon, as Victoria sat beside my hospital bed, she opened up. "I've been thinking a lot about why I said no when you asked for help," she began. "I think I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Yes. Of facing reality. Of admitting that all our wealth and status meant nothing if we couldn't help the people who mattered." 15. Victoria's words stuck with me. "Takes courage to admit you were wrong, especially when the consequences are so severe." Over the following weeks, as both she and I recovered, I began to see her differently. Not as the villain of my story, but as someone who'd been lost in materialism and finally found her way back to what mattered. Emma was discharged from the hospital first. Still weak but improving daily. Daniel transformed our living room into a recovery zone, with pillows, books, and her favorite movies queued up. I was released a week later, under strict instructions to rest and avoid heavy lifting. The pain gradually subsided, replaced by a deep ache and occasional twinges. But emotionally I felt lighter than I had in years. The Medicorp project was progressing well. I'd completed the initial designs, and they loved them. The second payment arrived, padding our savings account and giving us financial breathing room for the first time in months. One evening, as I sat with Emma watching cartoons, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Marcus. "Check your email. We want to show you something." Curious, I opened my laptop. He'd sent a video link. Footage from the children's hospital where they'd donated money. Kids were receiving treatment. Families were crying with relief. Doctors were explaining how the funds would save lives. At the end, a hospital administrator spoke directly to the camera. "Thanks to anonymous donors, we can now help 15 additional families this year. These children have a future because someone chose compassion over extravagance." 16. I watched the video 3 times, tears streaming down my face. This was real impact, real change. Lives saved because Marcus and Victoria had finally learned what mattered. Emma noticed me crying and climbed into my lap carefully, mindful of my incision. "Are you sad, Mommy?" she asked. I hugged her gently. "No, baby. These are happy tears. Really happy tears." That weekend we had our first family dinner since the surgeries. Me, Daniel, Emma, Marcus, Victoria, and my parents. It was strange but healing, sitting around the table together, sharing food and stories. Marcus raised his glass. "I want to make a toast. To my sister, who taught me the most important lesson of my life. That being wealthy means nothing if you're poor in compassion. You saved Victoria's life, but more than that, you saved my soul. Thank you." We clinked glasses, and for the first time in months, I felt genuine warmth toward my brother. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Trust takes time to rebuild, but we were moving in the right direction. After dinner, Victoria pulled me aside. "I want to help," she said firmly. "With your business, with anything you need. I know I can't undo the past, but I want to be part of your future if you'll let me." I considered her offer. "Actually, there is something. I've been thinking about expanding my design business, maybe hiring help. If you're serious about changing, maybe we could work together." Victoria's eyes lit up. "Really? You'd trust me with that?" I nodded slowly. "Trust has to be earned, but I'm willing to give you the chance. You've got connections in the business world and I've got the creative skills. Maybe we can build something meaningful together." We spent the next few weeks planning. Victoria used her real estate contacts to find affordable office space. She connected me with potential clients through her network, leveraging her social media following, which was substantial, to promote my design services. The response was overwhelming. Within a month, we had more projects than I could handle alone. We hired 2 junior designers, both recent graduates looking for their first break. The business grew rapidly, fueled by word of mouth and Victoria's tireless promotion. She'd found a new purpose, channeling her energy into something productive rather than superficial. Meanwhile, Emma continued improving. Her follow-up appointments were consistently positive. The transplant had been a complete success, and her body was adapting beautifully. She started attending school part-time, reconnecting with friends and rediscovering normal childhood activities. One afternoon, she came home bursting with excitement. "Mommy, I told my class about your business and Aunt Victoria. My teacher said you're both heroes." I laughed, pulling her close. "We're just people trying to do better, sweetheart." But her words warmed my heart. We were building something good from the ashes of something terrible. 6 months after the surgeries, life had found a new rhythm. The design business was thriving, Emma was healthy, and my relationship with Marcus and Victoria had transformed completely. They'd become real family. Present, supportive, genuinely invested in our lives. One evening, Victoria called with an idea. "I want to start a foundation," she said. "Something focused on helping families with medical expenses. I've been researching, and there are so many people in the same situation you were in, facing impossible choices because healthcare is so expensive. What if we could help them?" I was stunned. "That's a huge undertaking. Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," she replied. "I have the business connections, you have the creative vision, and Marcus can handle the legal structure. Together, we could make a real difference." We launched the foundation 3 months later. We called it Second Chances, dedicated to providing financial assistance for families facing medical crises, particularly those involving children. Victoria threw herself into fundraising, organizing events and leveraging her social circle, many of whom had attended her cancelled ceremony and felt compelled to support her new cause. The first gala raised over $500,000. Watching wealthy donors write checks and hearing their genuine interest in helping families moved me to tears. This was the world I wanted Emma to grow up in. One where people with resources used them to lift others up. 19. As Second Chances grew, so did the stories of families we helped. A single mother whose son needed heart surgery. A father whose daughter required specialized cancer treatment. Each case reminded me of our own desperate situation, and each successful outcome felt like a small victory. Emma, now 8 years old and full of energy, became our unofficial mascot. She spoke at events, sharing her story with a confidence that amazed me. "My mommy saved my life," she'd say, "and then she saved my aunt's life too. And now they're saving lots of other families. That's what heroes do." Her words were simple but powerful. Donors loved her spirit, and media outlets began covering our work. The foundation's profile grew, attracting larger donations and corporate sponsors. One of those sponsors was Medicorp, the pharmaceutical company I'd worked with. They offered a substantial grant and wanted me to continue designing for them long-term. The irony wasn't lost on me. The project that had saved Emma's life was now helping save countless others. Marcus had changed too. He'd left his high-pressure corporate job and now worked full-time as Second Chances legal counsel, handling contracts and ensuring compliance. He seemed lighter, happier, more present. "I wasted so many years chasing money and status," he admitted one day. "I thought that's what success looked like. But this, helping people, working with family, making a real difference, this is actual success." 20. 2 years after Emma's transplant, we held a special celebration, not just for her recovery, but for everything that had grown from that dark period. We gathered at the Foundation's headquarters, a modest but warm space filled with photos of families we'd helped. Emma cut a cake shaped like a kidney, giggling at the unusual choice. "It's weird but cool," she declared, making everyone laugh. I looked around the room. Daniel, proud and steady as always. Emma, vibrant and healthy. Marcus and Victoria, transformed by humility and purpose. My parents, tearful and grateful. Our team of volunteers and donors, united by compassion. This was my family now. Not just blood relatives, but a community built on shared values and mutual support. Victoria approached me, placing a small box in my hands. "This is for you." I wanted to wait for the right moment. I opened it to find a delicate necklace with 2 intertwined circles, one for each kidney, one for each life saved. Engraved on the back were the words, "Compassion is the greatest gift." I hugged her tightly, both of us crying. We'd come so far from that awful day in her marble foyer. The pain and betrayal had been real, but so was the growth that followed. "Thank you for giving me a second chance," she whispered. "Not just to live, but to become someone worth being." 21. The foundation continued expanding. We opened regional chapters, partnered with hospitals nationwide, and developed programs specifically for rare conditions. Emma remained involved, now older and more articulate, speaking at schools about the importance of organ donation and medical research. She'd found her own purpose through her experience. One day we received a letter that made international news. A family in Sweden had heard about second chances through social media. Their daughter needed the same procedure Emma had undergone, but their healthcare system had waitlist delays. They asked if our foundation could help facilitate connections with specialists in the United States. We worked with immigration lawyers, medical coordinators, and donor networks. 3 months later, that little girl received her transplant successfully. Her parents sent us a video message, holding their healthy daughter, expressing gratitude in broken English. "You give us hope," they said. "You save our family." That moment crystallized everything for me. What started as a personal tragedy had rippled outward, touching lives across continents. The pain Marcus and Victoria caused had been transmuted into something beautiful and far-reaching. I often thought about that horrible phone call when Marcus refused to help. If he'd said yes immediately, would any of this have happened? Would the foundation exist? Would hundreds of families have received help? I didn't know. But I'd learned that sometimes our greatest transformations come from our deepest wounds. As Emma approached her 10th birthday, she asked for something unusual. Instead of presents, she wanted donations to second chances. We organized a fundraiser at her school, and her classmates enthusiastically participated. They raised $15,000 through bake sales, car washes, and small donations from families. I watched Emma speak at the school assembly, explaining why medical access mattered, why helping others was important. She had her father's mechanical precision and my creative passion, but she'd developed something uniquely her own, a fierce commitment to justice and compassion. "Nobody should have to choose between parties and saving lives," she told the assembly. "That's not how families should work. That's not how the world should work." The applause was deafening. Later Marcus approached me, eyes misty. "She's incredible. And I almost missed knowing her because I was too selfish to see what mattered. Thank you for not giving up on us." I squeezed his arm. "You found your way back. That's what counts." The business continued flourishing too. Victoria and I had built something stable and meaningful, employing a dozen people and serving major clients. We'd even begun offering free design services to nonprofits, using our skills to help organizations like Second Chances expand their reach. Life felt full, purposeful, and deeply satisfying. The scars from our surgeries had faded to thin white lines, visible reminders of what we'd endured and overcome. 23. On the 5th anniversary of Emma's transplant, we hosted a major gala for Second Chances. Over 500 people attended, including medical professionals, donors, and families we'd helped. The evening was magical, elegant but not excessive, celebratory but focused on the mission. Emma, now 12 and poised beyond her years, gave the keynote speech. She spoke about her journey, the fear and pain, but also the hope and healing. She thanked the anonymous donor whose kidney had saved her life. She thanked me and Daniel for never giving up. Then she did something unexpected. "I also want to thank my Uncle Marcus and Aunt Victoria," she said, her voice clear and strong. "They made a terrible mistake when I was sick. They chose wrong. But then they chose to become better people. They've spent 5 years proving that people can change, that redemption is possible. Their foundation has helped over 800 families. That's 800 kids who got second chances because my aunt and uncle learned what really matters." The room erupted in applause. Marcus and Victoria stood, tears streaming down their faces, and Emma walked over to hug them. I watched from my seat, overwhelmed with emotion. This was the full circle, from betrayal to forgiveness, from selfishness to service, from broken to healed. Daniel took my hand. "You did this," he whispered. You took something terrible and turned it into something miraculous. I shook my head. We all did this. Together. 24. Life settled into a beautiful rhythm over the following years. The foundation grew beyond our wildest expectations, helping thousands of families and inspiring similar organizations worldwide. Emma graduated high school with honors and announced her intention to study medicine, specifically transplant surgery. I want to be on the other side, she explained. I want to be the one giving families good news instead of impossible choices. Marcus and Victoria sold their mansion, moving into a modest home and redirecting their wealth toward the foundation. They'd become some of the most dedicated philanthropists I knew, completely transformed from the people who'd once valued appearance over substance. My design business evolved into a creative agency specializing in nonprofit branding. We helped dozens of organizations tell their stories effectively, raising millions in donations through compelling visual campaigns. The work was fulfilling in ways I'd never imagined when I first started designing logos in my bedroom. Daniel and I renewed our own vows on our 20th anniversary, a simple ceremony in our backyard, surrounded by family and close friends. No marble floors or crystal chandeliers, just love and gratitude. Emma read a poem she'd written about second chances, about how the hardest moments can lead to the greatest growth. As I looked around at the faces of people I loved, many of whom had been strangers or adversaries just years before, I felt profound peace. The journey had been painful, but it had taught me something essential. That our capacity for compassion defines us more than our capacity for wealth ever could. 25. Today, as I sit in the Foundation's office, reviewing grant applications from families in crisis, I often think about that moment in Marcus's foyer when my world crumbled. I think about the desperation, the rage, the helplessness. And I think about the choice I made, not to match their cruelty with my own, but to demand better from them and from myself. Emma stops by after school, now a pre-med student volunteering in the transplant ward where she once lay as a patient. She's brilliant, compassionate, and determined to spend her life saving others. Marcus calls to discuss a new fundraising initiative. Victoria texts photos from a site visit to a hospital we're partnering with in rural Montana. Daniel brings me coffee and kisses my forehead before heading back to the garage he now co-owns, which provides free repairs for low-income families. This is the life we built from ashes. The wedding that never happened became 800 families saved. The kidney I donated became a bridge to reconciliation and purpose. The betrayal that nearly destroyed us became the foundation of something far more valuable than anything money could buy. Sometimes people ask if I regret setting that condition, if I regret risking my health for someone who'd hurt me so deeply. I always smile and shake my head. Because I didn't just save Victoria's life that day. I saved all of ours. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat.